Hello, guys, and welcome to Moneyline MMA coverage of UFC 282, featuring Jan Blachowicz against Magomed Ankalaev as the main event, facing off for the vacant light heavyweight championship belt, vacated by Jiri Prochazka after a devastating shoulder injury. These two men, one a former champion, will be duking it out to be the best light heavyweight in the UFC currently. This fight will take place December 10th, with the prelims beginning at 4:30 p.m., the main card beginning at 9 p.m. Central Time. It will be taking place in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena. The fights start, as I said earlier, at least capped off by Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. And as usual, we will begin discussing that main card first, moving down as we go through, excluding the recently removed Robbie Lawler versus Santiago Ponzinibbio fight, as Robbie Lawler just earlier today withdrew. So that being said, Jose, we're going to begin with the light heavyweight belt bout. This is very, man, I'm pumped. This fight was going to happen either way, right? But it got bumped up to being a fight for the belt, considering Jiri and Jiri got his injury, and Glover decided, you know what, we'll let Jan and Magomed fight for the belt. Glover declined the option to fight one of these two men for the belt, which is just another interesting scenario. But regardless, man, the UFC sure has a couple of killers on tap to take the belt's place until Jiri can get healthy and contend for it again. I mean, wow. Magomed specifically is on an absolute tear in the UFC, and Jan as well. Outside of his loss to Glover Teixeira, hasn't lost outside of Diego Santos since 2017. I mean, these guys are beasts, Jose, and I totally understand why the money line is what it is. It's relatively close, right? Magomed, the minus 260 favorite. Jan Blachowicz, a plus 196 underdog. Fascinating to see the former champion being the one that's the underdog. But at the same time, as I stated, man, we got a young killer, 9 years younger than Jan in Magomed, coming to take this belt. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, it's crazy to see. You think a lot more people would have more respect for the former champ, but like you said, Magomed, he's been on a crazy tear. His win streak has been phenomenal since that initial loss to Paul Craig when he first made his UFC debut. And other than that, the dude's been nothing but a straight killer, working his way to the top. I can see why he's the favorite in this one as well. I just thought, the money line would have been closer, and it may get later down the road because both guys carry a lot of power. This fight could end at any given moment. Jan is smart enough too. His experience in the UFC octagon can lead him to victory. That's what I think. And personally, both guys, the way I view it, both guys have wins over big names. I mean, Magomed to start has a wins over former contenders like Volkan Ozdemir and Anthony Smith. And while Jan Blachowicz being the former champ and losing most recently to Glover Teixeira as well. Yeah, and he that win that he got against Alexander recently with that knee injury, that was kind of like a weird type of thing. Yes, it was a win, but it wasn't a clean, definitive win. And to be honest, I'm surprised Jan didn't even get a title rematch against Glover Teixeira for the title. That was just an instance where I thought like, he deserves a rematch. He defended the title too, and against Izzy, but they never gave him that title shot. So it just kind of the way it worked around is kind of crazy. But yeah, with this one, it's tough. I like Jan Blachowicz so much, but Magomed, he's on a mission, man. I think there's gonna be like a Russian takeover in the UFC, and this guy, I think if he doesn't become champ this weekend, he will be champ very soon. So for this one, I'm gonna be leaning for Magomed, man. What are your thoughts?
Same here, man. I love Jan too, and he sure does have a crazy amount of power. There's a reason a lot of people call him the Polish power. So Jan is always active and ready to go for a KO. But I just don't really see Magomed being the kind of guy he's going to be able to KO. Magomed stands an inch taller and has a 3 inch shorter reach. But that being said, these are both big dudes, and neither of them really possesses enough size advantage, I think, to make it like notable in the fight. in terms of making it swing one way or the other. Man, it's hard to think how this fight's going to end. These aren't necessarily like they're killers, don't get me wrong. And both of them are coming off of early finish wins. But I don't necessarily see, in my mind, man, I don't know if I see this being finished early. I think both these guys are really going to respect each other's abilities, especially Magomed's going to respect Jan's power. And I think he pieces him up, but I'm just not sure about a knockout. Jan has been knocked out in the past, but like I said earlier, hasn't been since 2019 against Thiago Santos, and Thiago's a beast. So if Magomed wants to do that, he's going to have to show some true ability there and strength. Now, you mentioned Magomed's opening UFC debut loss to Paul Craig. I'm very impressed by that, man. I don't know about you, but Paul Craig, to get him on an opening UFC debut fight, he did get submitted, but with 1 second left in that fight, and he was out striking Paul Craig. Nobody knows what the judges were thinking on that, but from just the statistical standpoint, it looked like Magomed might have been able to take that decision win and be undefeated in the UFC had he not get choked out in the last few seconds there. So very interesting point there. And regardless, I agree with you. I'm going with Magomed here. I think his money line is just enough at 260 to where it's acceptable to make that single bet, and he'll be on the parlay as well. Nothing against Jan. I'm just not sure he's going to be able to keep up in the sense of this new young gun in Magomed. So we'll see. But yeah, like you said, man, I think the Russian people are just coming through in the UFC and taking each division one by one, and it seems like light heavyweight might be next.
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't know how exactly this fight will end, but I don't know if it go by decision. Magomed has he has no submission wins, while Jan he has 9 submissions, but he hasn't submitted anyone as of recent. So I'm gonna definitely lean towards Magomed for this one. The method of how he wins, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, man. Okay, so that sounds like we both agree then. We'll both go Magomed, and he'll be on the parlay, but no specific inclination for either of us to necessarily bet on a win method.
And that brings us to the next fight of the night. This fight also got bumped up, and this one's an exciting one. We got Paddy the Baddy Pimblett going against Jared Flash Gordon. Paddy is the betting favorite. He's the betting favorite at minus 250, while Jared Gordon is the betting underdog at plus 190. Man, this is exciting. Paddy's a big fan favorite. I'm excited to see him get back out there. It's kind of crazy. Watching the UFC countdown, both their upbringings. I didn't know much about Jared Gordon's past, but it's just crazy what's going up against the tables. You have a guy who has a troubled past, been in and out of jail and rehabs a lot, going against this essentially new Conor McGregor. And I like that story, man. Like, I think there can be some value behind the underdog in this one. Paddy the Baddy, I think he might be too much of a favorite at minus 250. I don't know what your thoughts are on this one, Nick.
Yeah, man. I really like betting on some other sports too. NFL. I think we all do, and some information and some tips I've learned from those sides of things is that when the public gets to be so much behind someone like the Bills in the NFL, these teams that are just dominating teams, and they get to be behind these teams. Trust me, these odds makers, these bookkeepers, the ones that are making the lines that open up and the public change the betting lines from there, right? But it has to start somewhere. And it's always, I'm telling you, man, every time Paddy comes out in the octagon and chokes someone out, those guys are saying, we cannot let these people get a premium on Paddy anymore. And we're seeing that pay out here. I mean, minus 250, I believe that's by far the biggest favorite Paddy's been in the UFC. He might have been a favorite previously, but that's pretty hefty, man. And we're talking about the best fighter he's fought, I think, ever. Flash Gordon has lost a couple tough fights against, former champion Charles Oliveira, and he most recently lost against Grant Dawson, who's kind of an up-and-coming beast in his own right. I don't know. This is a tough one, man, because as much as I respect Paddy Pimblett, and I can respect, he has such a big career. Even before the UFC, he did so much. So we can't just look at Paddy's 3 UFC fights as his whole pro fighting career. But that it kind of goes to say the same with Flash Gordon. And it does make me nervous, man. I don't think I'm comfortable here to bet a single bet minus 250 on Patty here. He might be able to pull it off, but Flash Gordon is a guy who also has ability to grapple. They both of these guys almost take two people, two takedowns per 15 minutes with a decent average of almost 50%. So the fact of the matter is that Patty is much better at going for the submission and getting the choke, and Flash Gordon is more of a guy who can take you down, or he might be able to defend your takedown, but he's not going to necessarily choke you out. He has no recorded submissions, at least in the UFC. So you would still like to think that Patty is much bigger of a threat on the ground in grappling. Oh man, this is tough. Patty's the bigger guy, I will say. It's worth noting Patty's got a 5-inch reach advantage. He's a little bit of the about an inch taller, so man, that might play a big advantage in Gordon's confidence standing up. So I agree that Patty should be favored here, but I'm very hesitant to make that bet, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Jared Gordon, yeah, they both these guys, like you mentioned, they're well-rounded fighters. Statistically, they're pretty close to each other. Likewise, even with significant strikes as well landed per minute. Though Jared Gordon does beat out Patty Pimblett in that one, throwing 5.53, while Patty throws 4.19. That being said, like you said, if Patty wins this, I don't know if how well he's gonna look on the feet, but I definitely can see him maybe sneaking in a submission. I mean, he just submitted Jordan Leva, and he's got pretty good jujitsu himself. And submitting Jordan Leva in the second round, that was pretty big. But I think this is a bigger test for Patty Pimblett. So I'm not as confident in Patty either. But if I had to put money down, I am gonna go with him as the favorite, solely because like you mentioned, he's the bigger guy. He has that reach advantage. And not only that, he has that hype and confidence behind him. And that can only bring someone so far. We won't know exactly how Jared Gordon is feeling until pretty much fight day. How is he going to feel knowing that people are going to be chanting Patty the Baddie? They're going to be chanting Patty all night long and getting loud when he does, Patty throws a little punch. The audience is going to go crazy for that. How does that affect his confidence? I don't know. How is that, like, the adrenaline in the game? It can affect the fight a lot. So this one I'm gonna go with Patty Pimblett, but it could change later down the week. But if I had to put money down, yeah, I'm gonna go with the favorite Patty Pimblett here.
Yeah, man. And as Jose said, all of our picks are subject to change by Saturday, which is why you should follow us at Moneyline MMA on Twitter to get our final picks over there on Saturday afternoon. But in the end, I agree. I know I haven't said, it kind of sounded earlier like I might be picking Gordon here, but I'm not. He's not. He recently got choked out by Grant Dawson earlier this year. And yeah, I haven't seen enough from Flash Gordon to think he's going to be able to convince the judges in a decision to win the fight or anything like that. I think Patty is just a draining guy to fight. He's a really good striker, and he can take you down and choke you out too. And a lot of times I feel like some fighters, they feel like they can use their advantage or whatever thing that they're best at, and that's what they can back out to whenever it's not going well, and it's just impossible to do that against Patty when he's probably better at you in all phases of the game anyways. So there's no doubt in my mind I'm still taking Patty here. I just don't know about the minus 250 there. Potentially a parlay option, but definitely I don't think I'm making any single bets there. That takes us to what will now be the third last fight of the night with the shuffle that kind of occurred. This will be Darren Till making a return, at least for now, in the middleweight division against Dricus Du Plessis. Darren Till, a plus 140 underdog. Du Plessis minus 180. Man, Darren Till has had an issues getting into the ring, and he got in the ring, fought Derek Brunson in 2021, got choked out, and hasn't been able to fight since. It's been looking tough for Darren Till. He hasn't won since 2019. We're talking about years that I would say at this point are almost irrelevant. But the thing about Darren Till is he's, as much as you think like, oh yeah, Darren Till, he has to have been around forever, blah, blah, blah. He's 29 years old. And not to say that Dricus is old or anything, but both these dudes are young, right? But I just think it's crazy for how long it feels like Darren Till's been around. He's 29. He's got a lot to learn yet and continue to improve into his low 30s when he'll be in his prime. So to me, this is a fascinating underdog spot for him. I understand the public's nervous. He's coming off a couple losses against Derek Brunson and Robert Whitaker, but those are incredible fighters. I think we can both agree top contenders in the division. And Dricus du Plessis he looks great, right? Beating Trevin Giles, Brad Tavares, but he's really, 3-0 in the UFC. That he just simply hasn't seen as much of the competition, nowhere near the competition Darren Till has. So to me, it's a fascinating underdog spot here, getting a guy with the experience and age that Darren Till is for plus 140. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It has been a minute since we've seen Darren Till. It's crazy to think that he was only 25 years old when he challenged Tyron Woodley for the welterweight strap back in 2018. And after that, yeah, he got brutally knocked out by Jorge Masvidal, and that's what kicked off Jorge's historic run. And yeah, that win over Kevin Gastelum, that was a win he should have had. And the Robert Whitaker and Derek Brunson, those fights, I mean, man, those are just tough ones for him. And yeah, time has only gone on. He's pulled out so many times, and he's just I don't know how good you can really get if you haven't really stepped in the cage that long. And just him pulling out so much, I was actually worried that he was going to pull out, and I actually am still worried that he may pull out for this pay per view because earlier today we found out about Robbie Lawler being pulled out, and then obviously the main event, the original main event, being pulled off as well. So this would like Darren Till needs to definitely show up and fight Saturday. How he looks at middleweight, I don't know, man. Like maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea for him to go back down because after all, his win against Kevin Gastelum is originally a welterweight as well. So maybe Darren Till needs to. Maybe he may have to go back down to welterweight. Maybe that's where he really thrives. But Duplessis, yeah, man, he's on a tear, and that's why I agree that he should be the betting favorite in this one, even though he's not as a big of a name as Darren Till. Just him being active and putting up that win streak. I mean, since last time that Darren Till fought, he was able to fight at least one more time before that. Um, so Duplessis doesn't have that much more ring time experience since Darren Till's last fought, but he definitely has that win streak and confidence behind him. At this point, Darren Till, I don't even know if he should have been ranked going into this fight, but it is just kind of a big name for Duplessis to kind of, I think, go through because I haven't seen the same confidence in Darren Till since he lost to Tyron Woodley, to be honest. Actually, since he got knocked out by Jorge Masvidal, just the way he fights, it's not as aggressive, and he doesn't look confident when he throws his strikes anymore. And there's times where he just completely outclassed, like against Robert Whitaker. He was just a walking punching bag pretty much. He wasn't really fast and reactive in blocking what Robert Whitaker was throwing at him. And if Duplessis, if he comes in with heavy hands, let me see his significant strikes and right here. Yeah, Duplessis, he throws 6.55 significant strikes per minute, while Darren Till throws 2.26. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. Where that's why I wouldn't probably go with Darren Till on this one, and I would go with Duplessis because he throws almost 7 significant strikes per minute, and that's exactly the problem that Darren Till ran into Robert Whitaker. I think he may become another punching bag for Duplessis, and end up losing by unanimous decision if he doesn't get finished for sure.
Yeah, I think this is one we'll have to disagree on, man. I personally, I get it. Duplessis stats look so much better in the UFC, blah blah blah. But I mean, all reality shows that he's only fought 6 rounds in the UFC between his 3 fights. I just don't think there's enough of a normalized like a sample size is what I'm looking to say in the sense that yeah, he's got a ridiculously great strikes landed per minute, but I want to see it be done against the real top end competition. Not to knock Brad Tavares or anything, but he is kind of a journeyman in the UFC. I'm not again not trying to throw shots to anyone here, but I just think Darren Till is being overlooked a little bit. I get it's been a while since he's fought in the ring in front of the crowd and all that. But in the end, if he's doing what he needs to be doing in training camp, in practice, he's experiencing the same things he needs to experience and get ready for against Duplessis. So I'm not at all concerned about that. The confidence angle, yes, potentially. But in my mind, man, if it's been that long since you get in the ring, you need to just go for it. Now, I don't know Darren Till personally or anything, but man, he's got to feel the urge of needing to get a win. Like there's got to be no one in that room that feels the need to win more than he does. He knows that he hasn't won since 2019, and we'll see if he's able to take that mindset and turn it in the right angle. I think he can do something special against Duplessis. It'll be a great fight though. He's an inch shorter, 2 inch less reach. So they're really similar size. I don't think it's going to look that noticeably different to our eyes. We'll have to see what ends up happening. I don't necessarily see this going to the ground by any means, although it could. Duplessis has logged a couple of takedowns, but only against Trevin Giles. So we'll see if that's a game plan he's been plotting to try against Darren Till. But in the end, I don't anticipate that to be the case. I think these guys are going to duke it outstanding, and we'll see what happens. My vote is going to be the underdog here, Darren Till.
There you guys have it. Nick's going to go for the underdog, Darren Till, and I go for the favorite, Duplessis. And then that leads us to the next fight of the night. It is the first fight of the night, and this is a featherweight bout between Bryce Mitchell and Ilia Topuria. Right now, Bryce Mitchell is the betting underdog at plus 124, while Topuria is the betting favorite at minus 158. Right now, both these guys are undefeated. This is a great fight to kick off the card. Two undefeated guys, that is going to be knocked off someone's record. And I'm kind of surprised though to see that Bryce Mitchell going into this one is actually the betting underdog, even though he does have more fight experience than Topuria. He does have 3 more fights. But maybe it's because Topuria has just been on a crazy kill. The methods he's been winning, having 3 KOs in the UFC. Maybe that's a big reason why. But Bryce Mitchell, on the other hand, he really hasn't been KO'd in his career either. So who's to say that Topuria is going to walk in and do this to the underdog here? So I'm curious to see what you think about this one, Nick.
Man, this is a fascinating, public experiment is in terms of where the money line is at with both of these guys being undefeated. And you did mention Bryce Mitchell having more experience, 15-0 versus 12-0. And even specifically in the UFC, we're talking about 4 fights versus 6 fights. So again, it's nothing crazy. I think that's part of the reason is, yes, he has a little more experience, but it's not like an extensive amount of experience, like doubled or anything like that. I don't know why this was so hard to call, man, for, looking these fights up ahead of time and getting ready for our show. These guys are so identical in multiple different facets of the game. And it's just going to be so fascinating to see what game plan I think each of these guys comes in with. Bryce Mitchell's never logged a knockout, but he still has a really phenomenal striking ability. I mean, having beaten Edson Barboza and outstruck him while he was doing it, I mean, that's just so interesting. Yeah, all logic tells me that Bryce Mitchell should be the favorite here. I do think a lot of it is people riding the wave of Ilia Topuria. And if we look straight up at the experience, Jai Herbert is a good win. I wouldn't say a great win. Ryan Hall is a good win. I also wouldn't say a great win. We'll see. His only current loss right now is to Topuria. But in any case, I think without a doubt, Mitchell gets the advantage of experience. I don't know. This is a fight I've been thinking multiple angles at. How is it going to be finished? Is it going to decision? This and that. I would lean yes that it goes to decision. I don't think there's going to be a knockout, right? I think it comes down to whether one guy gets the advantage grappling and chokes out the other, or gets the other in a leg lock or something like that, right? Some sort of submission. Because both of these guys have been submitted in the past. Or excuse me, actually, Topuria has never technically lost. But Bryce Mitchell did get choked out once in the Ultimate Fighter back in 2018. That's what it was. So, yeah, man. Will Bryce Mitchell get choked out again by Topuria? Will he not? I don't know. Without a doubt, I gotta say I'm leaning Bryce Mitchell here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm leaning on Bryce Mitchell as well. Um, Taporia, he does have that power that is scary, but I think Bryce Mitchell, he can play it smart, and I think he can coast this one, probably by decision. But this is definitely gonna be a tough one. Like it is a tough one to judge. But because Bryce Mitchell is the underdog too, and we do want would like some good returns. He's not a bad underdog to look into. So he's my actually he would be my underdog of the week is Bryce Mitchell because I feel that he is good enough to get to beat Taporia and that Ryan Hall win that Taporia has. I mean Ryan Hall literally just didn't do anything. He just literally did pulled a Paul Craig and just tried to go for like a heel hook and Taporia just straight up just ground and pounded him to sleep. So I would I think Bryce Mitchell he's too smart to do any of that. So for this one, yeah, I'm gonna go with the underdog Bryce Mitchell as well.
Yeah, man. I think it's just more likely to be the outcome with his direction. Topuria's never been taken down, but honestly, man, I think Bryce Mitchell. My prediction is that Bryce Mitchell is going to ride it out. Bryce Mitchell. I mean, these guys were trash talking on Twitter and all that. It's nice to see this fight come to fruition because it seemed like one of those spots where they were going to talk all this crap and never fight each other. So that sense, it's nice to see, and it makes me wonder if that's going to make either one of them more aggressive than they otherwise would be because of what's perceived as some beef between them. But maybe it's just a whole bunch of fodder, and it's a non-factor in this fight. I still predict Bryce Mitchell to not necessarily shoot for takedown after takedown. And I think Bryce Mitchell is going to believe that he has a better striking ability, and I think he's going to let Topuria go for takedowns if he wants, thinking that he can still be in an advantage space on the ground. But I just don't necessarily see Bryce Mitchell coming in here with some game plan that he wants to take down Topuria and choke him out. But I guess who knows? I just don't think that's going to be the case. My pick still goes with Thug Nasty, and I do think on a potential higher risk parlay, it could be a good underdog. He might end up being our underdog of the week. So that being said, we are going to cut it off there with 4 fights as they had to cancel the Robbie Lawler and Santiago Ponzinibbio fight that I mentioned earlier. It's most likely that they will bring up maybe the Rosenstrike versus Chris DeKaus fight up to the opening main card, potentially Chris Curtis versus Joaquin Buckley. I think that's listed as an early prelim, but dang, that's a really killer fight. And I see Chris Curtis tweeting about how he wants to get the fight of the night money and he's happy to go out there limping if he has to. OSP is fighting on the prelims. There's a lot of guys in the prelims here that could be moved up. Jose and I are going to let the UFC do their work and make that choice by Saturday. So make sure to follow us at Twitter at Moneyline MMA to get our picks. That 5th fight that does get added to this card could potentially be one of those picks. Definitely subscribe to us here on YouTube and let us know who you're betting on below. And before we let you go, we shall give a quick parlay on the fights Jose and I agreed on. And considering there's only 4 today, we're going to have to pretty much stick it with a 2-legger of Magomed and Jose. You're going to have to remind me. We agreed that Patty was going to win, didn't we not? Right?
Yes, we did. Yep, Patty.
So that 2-leg is minus 107. And then, as I mentioned, if you want to have a little bit of a higher risk parlay, Jose and I did favor and agree on the underdog Bryce Mitchell, but I'm not sure, it's confident enough to just throw out there as our best parlay. But you can throw Bryce Mitchell on there for a 3-leg plus 334. Not bad money at all. And then it's, go ahead and take your pick of Darren Till or Duplessis, depending on who you like between Jose and I's picks there. Otherwise, thanks for listening, guys. And after this next card, I believe we have a couple of weeks break. I think they have no cards for Christmas or anything like that. So if we do not get another chance to talk, we will definitely be around for the next UFC card. Have a great week, guys.